Good day, I'm Nurbek Svitahunov and you're watching the news from Kazakhstan. Young reporters received a gift in honor of Journalism Day from the judicial system. The administrative court has sentenced Zhanauzen.net journalists Inga Imanbay and Anar Abildayeva to 10 days arrest. The women were accused of violating Article 373 of the Administrative Code on the procedure of rallies, marches, and meetings.
The young woman showed up in the court wearing white ribbons and T-shirts with portraits of Bolat Atabayev and Janbolat Mamay. On Thursday, they were tried for protesting against the arrests of the civil activists. The judge announced his decision immediately and the court session lasted no longer than 5 minutes. In the past, these reporters have been already tried and fined for the same charges. There are people who will continue carrying out our mission, and after 10 days, I promise you that I'll return to fight for the liberation of Janbolat Mamay and Bolat Atabayev, as well as for all other wrongfully imprisoned political prisoners whom I became myself. This is ridiculous. Officials in the president's administration crossed the moral line when they resorted to conviction and imprisonment of young women. I think it was a shameful decision and a shameful moment in the history of president's administration. To recap, on the day when authorities arrested stage director Bolat Atabayev and politician Janbolat Mamay, civil activists went on the streets of Almaty with a protest. They called for a release of people charged with promoting social hatred. The youth group led by Inga Imanbay and Salamat Omash marched towards the building of the National Security Committee, but the authorities decided that the rally was illegal.
Meanwhile, members of the media were awarded diplomas for their contribution to national journalism on Thursday, June 28th in Almaty. This time, employees of independent publications were not among the prize winners. Their absence was explained by the head of the Journalists Union of Kazakhstan, Kazim Ataev, that they've been already awarded honorable prizes. Union awards are only granted once in a journalist's lifetime.
The events in Zhanauzen were covered by newspapers Respublika, Общественная позиция and Взгляд, but we already had award winners among reporters of these publications. Around 30 winners were awarded cash bonuses and certificates. Among them were veterans of journalism as well as young generation reporters. Kazim Ataev touched upon an arrested journalist, Janbolat Mamay, who is now in the pre-trial detention center in Aktau. Mataev said that he had arranged a number of press conferences in his defense, but added that Mamay needed to make a choice between journalism and politics. We've arranged 5 or 6 press conferences in Mamay's defense. We know that he's not the only public activist. I have got to know him through Jasalash newspaper, where he worked as a reporter. He's very talented as a journalist, but there was a choice he needed to make between journalism and politics, and he clearly made this choice. But I support him as a journalist.
In other news, after 2 days of going through the chain of command, Bolat Atabayev's sister Danna was allowed to meet her brother. She spoke with reporters afterwards. According to Atabayeva, the director is in good condition. His spirit is not broken despite the fact that he was beaten during his arrest, as we reported earlier.
It was revealed that Armanjan Nurgaliyev, the national security investigator of the Almaty office who visited the stage director during his online interview to the Azatik radio, was the one who used force against Atabayev. The director's lawyer filed a complaint, and it is likely the case of physical abuse will be investigated shortly. In addition, Dana Atabayeva confirmed that her brother had a pre-stroke condition. Atabayev suffers diabetes, and due to the dropped blood sugar level, he nearly fell into a coma during his transfer to Aktau. Other inmates rendered him aid, and Atabayev is especially grateful to a man named Ayan. On Thursday, it was revealed that Atabayev and Mamay were offered to give testimony against opposition leaders, including Kozlov and Sapargali, in exchange for freedom. Both activists said they will not sign anything except documents they will draw up themselves. Per recent reports, investigators have agreed to accept the written testimony submitted by Atabayev.
Булат действительно свои действия все описал, то есть то, что он ездил туда 2 раза.
Bolat indeed has described all of his actions on paper, that he's been onto Zhanauzen twice and that he supported the striking workers. Also that he told them that they were doing the right thing by demanding their rights. He included all of this in his testimony and only admitted that he feels great remorse for the bloodshed. Meanwhile, Mamay Bekujeev, the father and a public defender of Janbolat Mamay, is denied a visit with his son. The man has been waiting outside the NSC detention facility of Aktau for already 2 days. Bekujeev believes his son should not regret anything, as he did not commit any illegal actions and thus has nothing to fear. The arrested activists were also charged with an attempt to overthrow the constitutional system, which Mamay's father considers a total absurd.
2 дня я мучаюсь, дежурю возле
I've been distressed for 2 days now, waiting outside the NSC detention facility. To this day, they haven't informed me of the results for no obvious reason. Therefore, once I get to talk to my son, I'll convince him to stand his grounds. That's what the law enforcement is afraid of, that I will pass on this truth to him.
Public figure and Decemberist Hasan Kozakhmet intends to expose the poet Mukhtar Shakhanov along with other participants of the December 1986 events, Gulbahram Junis, Umid Basmanova, and Tolegen Aljanov. Kozakhmet says he has irrefutable evidence that they are not who they say they are. Our reporters have more on the controversy.
Zholtokhsan uprising participants are accused of document forgery, fraud and libel. Hasan Kozakhmet, public activist, dissident and one of those who took part in December 1986 events, decided to avoid the imposters' medals, honors and privileges through the court. The list of imposted Decemberists includes Mukhtar Shakhanov, Gulbahram Junisova, Umid Basmanova and Tolegen Aljanov. The public activist claims that these people have nothing to do with the uprising and cannot be called Zholtokhsan participants. Replying to the inquiry, the General Prosecutor's Office of Kazakhstan informed in its letter dated February 24, 2012 that Gulbahram Junis was not issued a rehabilitation certificate and is not considered a political prisoner. In 1986, Aljanov Tolegen served as a police captain. He was commanding a platoon which was actively beating protesters at Brezhnev Square, for which Aljanov received a certificate of merit. During December events of 1986, Mukhtar Shakhanov was in Moscow for a recital. Later in March of 1987, when many Decemberists were placed under investigation, Shakhanov made a speech at the plenary session of Komsomol Central Committee of the Kazakh Soviet Republic, condemning event participants and noting that people at the square were renegades and nobody gave them the right to speak on behalf of the people. They are not Zholtokhsan participants, they are imposters. I have evidence that they did not take part in that demonstration. They only come to speak to various events, getting all the exposure and recognition, but they have done nothing to earn it. Leader of Zholtokhsan Karlagashtere organization Gulbahram Junis is infamously remembered for pelting with eggs and plastic bottles Vladimir Kozlov, leader of the unregistered party Alga, for his intent to participate in the presidential elections. The woman believes the accusations are baseless, although after the egg pelting incident her apparent pro-government position is noted by many others, along with Kozakhmet. Junis claims the latter is just a mean person, and that's the actual reason behind the accusations. He takes it upon us surviving Zholtokhsan participants, fine, but there are also those who died. He wanted to exhume the body of Lezat Asanova to prove that she did not take part in the uprising. That is wrong. Hasan just has nothing to do and is a nobody. That's why he's just accusing everyone. Tolegen Aljanov refutes accusations as well, explaining that he indeed commanded a unit that never beat anyone. When he was presented with a certificate of merit, he rejected it and quit the job. Several years later, he became a member of the commission investigating December events, published secret documents related to the uprising and stood up for the demonstrators. Moreover, he does not call himself the event participant. Hasan Kozakhmet said that he filed a suit, but he have not received any copies of it. At the same time, we are already counter-suiting on 3 charges, on top of moral damages claims. Poet Mukhtar Shakhanov believes that none of them have been called to court because the courts did not accept the public activist claims due to the lack of evidence. In the meantime, Gulbahram Junis filed a counterclaim with the Inter-District Almaty Court. She charges Hasan with libel and demands he either produces evidence for his statements or retracts them.
Journalists became unwitting witnesses to the scandal inside a women's prison. During the contest for the title of Best Seamstress, held in the Shymkent Women's Prison 167/4, one of the inmates tried to complain to the media about conditions inside. She was not allowed to speak and was carried away by force. The administration of the colony refused to comment on the incident, and journalists were asked to leave. We were unable to find out what the nature of prisoners' complaints was, although the incident itself was caught on camera.
At first, everything went as planned. Graduates of Professional SM No. 5 presented handmade works to the contest, including clothes, jewelry and souvenirs. According to the head of women's prison, more than 50 inmates were taught tailoring skills in 2 years. The prison leadership also reported that not a single serious violation was reported in the facility over the years, and all conflicts were always solved peacefully. Inmates are always welcomed to address their issues to the prison leadership, both in person or in writing, and they always receive feedback. If an inmate should be isolated from the others, we normally arrange that, so there are no reasons for complaints. However, the warden's optimistic words happened to be refuted at that very moment. One of the inmates chose the occasion and attempted to tell reporters the true story of the prison life. Everything is done for the money here. The overall prison environment is pretty bad. Nobody listens to us. In 2 years, I've not had a single violation, yet I've received 2 warnings in a row in just 1 week. Our complaints don't get addressed. The woman hasn't managed to finish talking as she was taken away by force. After that, the warden avoided answering reporters' questions, saying the woman had a mental disorder and can be taken seriously. Calm down. Don't calm me down. Why doesn't Nazarbayev pay attention? What was that all about? She's insane. Then let's talk why there are so many insane people in your prison. The warden refused to make comments, yet explained that all convicts consider themselves innocent. While preparing this news report, the prison leadership repeatedly requested not to air the story and even threatened legal actions if done otherwise.
Members of the Southern movement entitled Leave Housing to the People arrived in the capital in hopes of getting answers from the authorities. People are tired of endless battles with the banks and sending letters of complaints to officials. They demand the authorities to intervene and help borrowers that found themselves in a difficult situation.
On Thursday, 16 delegates of the public movement Leave Housing to People from Almaty and Shymkent attempted to talk to the country's MPs and officials before the latter went on the summer break. The first stop was the parliament. Here, activists met by MP Askat Bikenov, who was asked a hail of questions and reminded about parliamentarians' own outrage with banks' interest rates. Back in 2010, MP Nekharoshov suggested to cut interest rates in half, since they were too high even for parliament members. Nekharoshov said how it is possible that even the MPs cannot pay the interest rates. But the parliamentarian responded by saying it was people's own fault, since no one forced them to take loans. Nevertheless, the MP promised to look into the complaints and help them within in accordance with the law. We are a legislative body. If banks have indeed wrongfully imposed penalties on you, we will recall those, but everything else will be according to the law. Later in the day, activists also visited Senate, President's Administration, National Fund Samrukazana, hoping that their actions will bring some results and the government will finally pay notice their problems. Desperate mortgage holders are simply not capable of paying back. Some lost their jobs, others were reduced in wages. The situation is worsened by penalties and fines imposed by the financial institutions. Mortgage holders warn that if the authorities ignore them, a mass protest action is a possibility. If these problems are not resolved by fall when our DRMPs come back rested from the summer break, all of us will come here to protest, and there will be a lot of us. Yesterday's action was void of any incidents and police involvement. Mortgage holders submitted their letters with over 100 signatures and went back home, hoping that they will see at least some reaction soon.
Recipients of recourse payments in Karaganda are once again standing up against ArcelorMittal. On Thursday, near the monument to miners, they declared that neither prosecutors nor state labor inspectors have any authority over the industrial giant, which found new ways of avoiding compensation for its employees.
The company must recalculate our injury benefits, otherwise it appears to evade its responsibility. The miners received a status of disabled people after receiving injuries at workplace. Former miners Ivan Shtrek and Sergei Bazhanov long fought for recalculation of recourse payments, which was finally approved at the legislative level a year ago. According to former miners, despite the ruling, ArcelorMittal still finds new loopholes for financial manipulations. Recalculation of the recourse payment is based on the average salary of coal mining departments and not the workstation where the injury was received. Besides, instead of monthly salary adjustments for inflation, they only receive it once a year. Official supervisory body agreed with the arguments of the regressive payment receivers. The prosecution's inspection showed that the employer did not increase the recourse payments in proportion to increased minimum wage since the beginning of the year. Due to insistence of prosecutors, the state labor inspector made the management of ArcelorMittal recalculate said payments. The industrial giant, in turn, sued the Department of Labor and Social Protection. The minimum wage increased by 10% this year, and this means that they were supposed to recalculate our payments accordingly starting January. We're talking about $60 a month. The state adopted this legislation to secure the rights of injured workers, and it doesn't let the company lower the standard of life for disabled, since the minimum wage is always a bit higher than the inflation.
Meanwhile, the government is preparing for a major crisis. Recently, Prime Minister Masimov said he expected oil prices to fall to $50 per barrel this year. The chief of cabinet did not pull the figure out of a hat, as it seemed at first, since in the last 3 months, the price of crude oil fell by 30%. The state is preparing to cut the budget. However, economists reassure that shocks in the stock market will not affect ordinary citizens, saying that oil money never trickles down to them in the first place.
$50 per barrel is realistic. The cabinet is preparing the country for the daunting prospect. For the first time, the Prime Minister voiced actual numbers instead of the familiar declarations about the oncoming new wave of the global crisis. All of this means that Kazakhstan is in for a serious financial turmoil.
Есть такие предположения, что во второй половине года возможно вторая волна кризиса и цена.
There are reasons to believe that the new wave of crisis may hit in the second half of this year, and the oil price will remain very low. At the National Commission meeting, I have asked to consider other alternatives of economic development in case the oil price will drop to $50. This drop is a rather likely scenario.
$50 за баррель. Это не фантастический, а это может быть и достаточно реалистичный сценарий.
The March peak was $125 per barrel. Since then, the price has been going down slowly but steadily. Within 3 months, the oil price dropped by $30, reaching $92.6 on June 27th. Volatile numbers at world exchanges have been in spotlight for several days. Expert Dmitry Alexandrov cannot understand why the government is expecting a drop just to $50 and not more. He estimates the bottom could be as low as $20, and everything will depend on how the crisis will develop. Alexandrov says that Kazakhstan will be hit hard as oil brings most of the budget money. The only possible solution is increased internal integration between Russia and Kazakhstan. The more or less stable industrial branches might mitigate the unfavorable effect of external export outside of customs union. Karim Masimov only repeated prior statements made by experts. The crisis is inevitable and it's coming soon. Greece, Spain and Italy are in big risk zone. Huge government debts in the EU will contribute to the upcoming world economic decline. China may also be added to the list, as alarming tendencies are also observed there. In this case, oil and metal prices will go down as well. The good state of American economy brings some hope for improvement. It leads the global economy, and as long as it's in good shape, there won't be any major drops. Economist Mukhtar Tayjan shares the idea that low oil prices are good for oil-dependent countries. This will only motivate Kazakhstan industries and lead to an economic growth. The optimal oil price is $80 per barrel. The economist says it is possible for oil to drop down to $50. However, the life of ordinary Kazakh citizens is unlikely to be affected in any way. This will not affect the overall population. I understand that our government is concerned. The oil prices remained high in the last decade. The only disadvantage is that the decline in export prices will lower real estate value as well. Citizens of the country feel the fluctuations of energy prices on the global market through gasoline costs, although this decline is not always proportional. Starting June 1st, gasoline will go down 6%, whereas oil will drop by as much as 30%. All oil profits go to the national fund, bypassing the state budget. I don't think that social expenses will be affected by oil price decline. However, it may slightly affect the economic growth, particularly the GDP. Back in 2008, it took a few months for oil prices to drop from a historic high of $150 per barrel to a measly $45. That's when the population had to tighten their belts. Now economists urge the government to leave social spending alone and instead cut loose numerous inactive projects sponsored from the state budget.
Kazakhstan president's former son-in-law Rahat Aliyev is thinking about moving to the United States. The information was published in the newspaper Malta Today. The publication examined the criminal case filed against the 49-year-old Aliyev by the prosecution of Austria. It attempted to find out why the authorities of Malta awarded Aliyev permanent residence status, despite objections from Interpol. This question is answered in the newspaper by Malta's foreign minister, who offered the following explanation.
Rahat Aliyev is married to Yelnara Sharazova, citizen of the EU, therefore he has a legal right to obtain residency permits in the European Union. The minister noted, however, that if Austria issues an arrest warrant for Aliyev, Malta will comply with the demand. Foreign press reports that now Aliyev is planning to leave for the United States. According to the New York Times, Aliyev already organized a lobby in the US House of Representatives, although Richard Holland, US ambassador to Kazakhstan, is urging Washington to take a neutral position on the issue.
In similar news, Switzerland refused to consider the request sent by Kazakh authorities to extradite the ex-mayor of Almaty, Viktor Khrapunov, reports Geneva's RTS TV channel. As explained in an interview with a Swiss Ministry of Justice spokesman, Kazakhstan requested the extradition of Khrapunov on the grounds that he is wanted by Interpol, but these arguments were deemed unsatisfactory by Switzerland.
Geneva authorities are now considering granting a political refugee status to Khrapunov and his family. The TV channel reports that persecution and criminal proceedings against the ex-Almaty mayor in Kazakhstan started right after he exposed Nazarbayev's family. Furthermore, Khrapunov says that his family members cannot escape surveillance of Kazakhstan's Secret Service even on Swedish soil. Earlier in February, they found a recording bug planted under the car of Khrapunov's daughter-in-law, Madina, the daughter of the opposition politician and ex-banker Mukhtar Ablazov. A criminal case was initiated in this regard. Switzerland law enforcement have also initiated a criminal cases against Nazarbayev's son-in-law Timur Kulibayev.
Kidney Day was organized in Almaty within the framework of the Healthcare Ministry's Salavati Kazakhstan program. On this day, each Kazakh resident is able to check his kidney free of charge. On Saturday, June 30th, the checkup will be held in the City Clinic number 7. While on Thursday, the press was allowed to see the new Department of Transplantology. More details on this potentially life-saving development next.
Zhanat Shakuov has been waiting for this surgery for 3.5 years. Finally, a few weeks ago, he received a long-awaited kidney transplant. His own brother became the donor. The patient feels well and is grateful to doctors who saved him. It feels terrible when you can't drink water or eat what you want. My daily hemodialysis used to cause frequent high blood pressure, and it even led to cardiac arrest a couple of times. On Thursday, during the tour of the hospital on the outskirts of Almaty, doctors emphasized that it was the first kidney transplant surgery performed in a city hospital in Kazakhstan. Previously, such complex operations were possible only in 2 large medical institutions. To receive treatment, these patients have to travel to Almaty and Astana, get on the short lists and wait for the suitable donor. Currently, we are performing 15 surgeries per year out of 2,000 needed, and that's the real difference in numbers. Kidney transplant is an expensive surgery, and abroad it may cost up to $300,000. According to officials, patients in Kazakhstan have a chance to receive the surgery at the expense of the state. For instance, it paid about $2,200 for Zhanat's treatment and recovery of his brother. Now we have a department of transplantation in our city hospital. 3 transplantation surgeries were successfully performed, and of course we are happy to see that our patients feel well and were discharged in good condition. This means that many of our patients, approximately 300 people on hemodialysis, have a chance to receive treatment absolutely for free thanks to the guaranteed state healthcare. Now Zhanat needs to go through 6 months of rehabilitation. He is happy for an opportunity to have children in the future, which was previously impossible because of the illness. However, doctors do not miss a chance to remind the population about being proactive. Quite often people are brought to the emergency rooms only at the last stage of the disease.
Environmentalists are raising an alarm, claiming that the sewage lake Sorbulak is on the verge of outbreak. According to Mels Yeleusizov, the dam is saturated with water that is gradually starting to wash away. There are other cautions as well. The bottom of the lake houses toxic sludge that has been collecting in Sorbulak over the years. Here's what experts had to say on the situation.
This lake of wastewater is notorious for its appalling smell and surprisingly big fish. The water reservoir is more than 25 years old and it accumulates wastewater from all basins of the Almaty region. Environmental experts say that the water in the lake is toxic. Residents are aware of that, however, keep tending cattle on the lake banks. Mels Yeleusizov, the country's main green activist, is certain that dam failure is inevitable. If there is an earthquake, the dam will fail and nothing will help to stop 1 billion cubic meters of water. In mud flow, a particle of water captures 55 parts of soil. It means that if the dam fails, instead of 1 billion, there will be 55 billion cubic meters of mud. In comparison, the area of Kopchagai Reservoir is 120 kilometers and it holds only 14 billion cubic meters of water, which is the annual flow of the Ili River. Sarbulak Reservoir holds 55 billion cubic meters of water, which cannot be held by any tributaries. That is why it flows the whole year. Specialists from the Almaty Institute of Geology say that flooding is not the main danger Sarbulak can cause. According to Zhakabay Dastai, the deputy of Water Resources Department at the Geography Institute, the level of wastewater in the lake has dropped dramatically over the past 5 years. Moreover, people catching and selling big fish in Sarbulak should be aware it feeds on toxins. There is no immediate risk of the dam failure. Instead, there is an issue with the return of water supply. The water services company demands to increase the cost of water. They also complain that people do not consume much. Car washing services are main contaminators as they dump used water back to the reservoir. The main problem is that we don't have a divided drainage system, so sanitary, bacteriological and other wastewater all goes to the reservoir. Although there is no threat of a dam failure, Zhakabay Dastai says that if the lake dries out, residents of nearby villages are in for an unpleasant surprise in the form of faces storms. The biowaste may be spread through the populated areas by wind. According to the expert, this is the one but a very serious problem that the lake of wastewater can cause.
This is all we have time for now. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.